Hey everybody, it's Jeff at Steve Weiss Music again here with our interview series from our education department. Trying to bring you the educator point of view in terms of teaching percussion, bring you some unique insights from around the country. So today we have a special guest who happens to be real close to our offices here, only about 10 minutes away, is a director of instrumental music over there. So we're going to talk to him in just a second. Just wanted to let you know that we're still here cranking things out like we always are. Steve Weiss, we appreciate your business. Hit us up on the website there, steveweissmusic.com, for anything that we can do for you, whether you're a player or you're a teacher or you're looking at getting that last minute thing you forgot for indoor drumline season, whatever it may be, we're here. So today we are meeting with Dr. Jeffrey Barudin. Jeffrey is, like I said, he's working down the street from us, basically at Abington Friends School. He's also done a lot of work at different universities around the country. Maryville University is fortunate enough also to be with a lot of civic orchestras. He's even on a Grammy-winning recording, if you can believe that. He's got some great materials here in our library as well that he's written. So we want you to check that out. If you go to the search box and search his last name, Barudin, Barudin, you can find everything that he's written that we have here. He attended Penn State for his undergrad, University of Michigan for his master's and his doctorate. And today we're going to talk about an article that came out a few years ago. But I like the content of it so much, and I think it would really help those of you that are in the classroom. It was in 2019, it wrote for Percussive Notes that Dr. Barudin wrote, Teaching the Gen Z Percussionist. And we're on our way out from Gen Z. We're going to talk about that a little bit. So I'm going to shut up now and actually introduce Dr. Jeffrey Barudin. Jeff, thanks for joining us.
Thrilled to be here, Jeff. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. So as I said, you've got a lot of stuff going on. I love it when we have folks that are so well-rounded and doing different things as far as writing music and writing articles, things like that. So, but let's start with how you got started as a youngster. When you started in percussion, what kind of lit your fire and got you going?
So I started in music really early. Piano was my first instrument, and I started like back in kindergarten. Mm-hmm. My parents tell stories about like I was plunking out tunes on my grandparents' piano when I was like 2, just like what I was hearing on the record player. And so they got me started early, and so that was that. But then I started, like a lot of kids, I just started an elementary school band. So we started in 4th grade. We got to choose an instrument. I was shocked that not everyone wanted to play percussion. It didn't make sense. It was like, why would you not choose this? Sure. And that's where it went. And, obviously the piano background was super helpful, but so that just kind of took me all through high school. And percussion, I've never looked back. Music has just always been like the only possible career path I really saw myself in. Mm-hmm. And it was from there just deciding if I wanted to be a music educator or a music performer. Yeah. My parents are both educators, and so it runs in our family. And I was, you want to make a little bit of money. You're teaching like drum set lessons as a junior in high school or something like that, just to the kid down the street or something like that. And so I was already teaching lessons at this point. I was like, I think education's where it is. And so that brought me to Penn State, and it's just gone from there. Yeah. Now, what is your role? You teach at Abington Friends School, which again is real close to us here. It's been there a long time, I know, and it's quite the place. So what's your role there and your position there? Yeah, can I just say, this is my first year at AFS. Okay. And they're established in 1697, which is out of this world. Yeah. It's just, they're setting up this whole thing about like the 4th century of Quaker education. And it's just, that is mind-blowing. Wow. Yeah. So cool to be affiliated with a school with that history. So I'm the director of instrumental music, as you mentioned. It's not a big school, and so I'm working with kids grades 5 through 12. So I start them they start on string instruments in 4th grade, and then they have the choice if they want to go over to band instruments in 5th grade, and so I take them from there and just bring them all the way up. And so it is a full position, I definitely, it runs the gamut as far as like the musical exploits that you get to experience with your kids, but it's great. And like I said, it's only my first year. I'm still kind of feeling it out a little bit, but it's got a great history. And there's a lot of potential there as well, so I'm thrilled to be there. And you're at Maryville University as well, right? Yes, so I'm with Maryville, which is based out of St. Louis, as an adjunct online music instructor. Oh, cool. And that is a job I feel like I was very fortunate to get. I was teaching collegiately for about a decade out in St. Louis at Lindenwood University. with the pandemic and the resulting, the position was eliminated, and so I had to kind of scramble a little bit. And I was really thrilled that I was able to hook up with Maryville and just kind of start cobbling together a little bit of like a continuation of teaching collegiate music. And it's online. And so when I moved from St. Louis to Philly, I was like, is this going to be a problem? And they were like, no, just stay teaching. No, keep teaching.
Yeah. They have Wi-Fi there, right?
Yeah, exactly. and so I've been with them now for 3 years, and it's been a really like consistent and really enjoyable experience. I'm just teaching music appreciation and a little bit of like, maybe I taught a history of rock one semester or something like that. But teaching collegiate music is a lot of fun. It's especially the classroom stuff, because I got so focused on teaching percussion lessons, percussion ensemble, things like that. It's really nice to kind of like just get away from that world a little bit sometimes and just talk about music to non-musicians.
Oh, sure.
And just kind of help them develop new appreciations, things they haven't thought about before, music they haven't heard of before. That's a really cool thing.
Right.
And so I'm lucky to be able to keep that up with them as well.
So you went from college, well, you stayed in college, obviously, with the online thing, but then you worked at the Sanford School in Delaware, which is, I guess, more of the public school or the younger kids, right?
That is actually also an independent school, and so they're also a self-contained pre-K to 12 independent situation. It was a similar to position to what I have now at Abington, but just a little different. It was more like 7th to 12 instead of 5 to 12.
Okay.
And yeah, that was a great experience also. I consider myself lucky to have landed at a place like AFS where it's a little closer. I feel as though it speaks to my personal beliefs and like any sort of like musical mission that I might have. It speaks to that a little bit more. And so I'm really happy about the path that I've taken that's brought me where I am.
And so that's where I guess the Gen Z and that kind of stuff comes in, is with those age kids. So again, the article is in Percussive Notes and it's teaching the Gen Z percussionist. So let's start with what is or when is the Gen Z generation, if you would, and what was your attraction to writing and or researching, about those students?
Sure. So Gen Z, I believe, and I'm probably going to mess this up a little bit, but I believe that they have kind of characterized it as students born between like the mid '90s up until about 2010.
Okay.
And so it's the turn of the century students. And at the time when I wrote it, that's when I was teaching at Maryville. I'm sorry, at Lindenwood, working with college students who were, like right there at like in the thick of Gen Z. And I found myself realizing that a lot of the teaching strategies that I was accustomed to or that I had been taught were not really as effective as I wanted them to be. And I wasn't necessarily getting the results from my students that I was hoping for. And so it caused me to just think a little bit about, so this is a new crop of students. I mean, that's one of the things about teachers. We're just always teaching the youngest generation, and so they just move on, and then we have the next youngest generation. And so I really feel like it's reliant on teachers to adapt to the new learning preferences and strategies and methodologies that will work best with this current crop of students. And so that's what really led to the article. I wanted to do a little bit of research to make myself a more effective teacher.
Okay. So I enjoyed so much that I have so many friends that are teachers, whether it's percussion or just band directors, and just thinking about what they go through, hearing their stories of work, it was just, a lot of this stuff hit me that it was really insightful. A couple of things that you write in terms of like generalizations about the Gen Z students was that they want to have a positive impact on the world and are willing to achieve through activism and a more global, inclusive mindset. They will both participate in and actively create activities they enjoy, particularly those that are media-based. And they've never known a world without the technology advancements we see today and can use and integrate technology intuitively. So is that, I don't want to say, hey, is that a big part? I mean, I know it's a big part already, but from a Gen Z standpoint, you think that's kind of if you were to pick a priority of what do we need to do most to reach them, is it technology-based or is it more understanding them intrinsically?
Yeah, technology is certain an aspect of it, but I don't think that's the primary part of it, because have been surrounded with technology their entire lives. And so technology is important to them, but it's not as fundamental as it was to maybe people our age, where we actually saw the technology develop.
Sure.
You know, and so to us, it's amazing what technology, and to them, it just is.
It is, yeah.
It's just what it is.
That makes
And
sense.
so I really do think that it's the former of the things that you were mentioning, as far as like them wanting to have an active role in their educational process, them kind of having much more of a global mindset as far as what is happening in the world. They are, you know, thanks to, again, technology, they are fully aware of things happening around the world. They have lots of different sources. They have YouTube and TikTok, and, you know, 10 years ago they had like, you know, Vines and stuff like that. But they have all of these technological things that are sharing aspects of the world and encouraging them to really kind of have a more active role in what's happening in their community and in a more global sense as well. And so that's definitely, I think, where you can hit Gen Z best, is by appealing to that aspect.
And they, you know, I feel the same way, especially with social media and things like you're discussing. I think it's good and bad. I think we all think that to some degree, maybe more bad than good, depending on who you speak to.
Right.
But the awareness that they have of what's going on around them, and the fact that things are customized. I used to say, even on a non-tech basis, I used to say, you know, people now have a picture of their dog on their credit card. Like you can customize anything you want.
Absolutely.
And now with technology, they can almost be who they want. And so on a positive side, it kind of enables them to open doors to that kind of exploration. At the same time, and I feel this as an adult, I'm exposed to so much of the negativity that you and I never had at that age.
Yeah.
You know, even now at this age, we never had that. So we didn't know it was going on out there. So it can lead to like some depression and anxiety sort of things like that too. But one of the other things I wanted to get to is that the negative characteristics, I think, are what we focus on a lot of times, or what you...
us old folks,
you mind, you say Gen Z and you get a... All right, so now as we read this, people are going to go, So the negative characteristics, they have no patience for learning, particularly a topic that may seem ancillary or irrelevant to their educational goals. They rely on instant gratification. Again, I think the technology, they're so used to that.
Absolutely.
And there's always a show on one of the 500 channels that they can go watch that they enjoy. They prefer information to be provided for them rather than search or work for themselves. And they're afraid of failure to the point of not trying if failure is a possibility. So how do you get around that in the classroom? I think some people are afraid to cater to that because they feel like that they're enabling, you know, that they're coddling almost. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, that mindset I've grappled with because that's definitely my like. Use a Simpsons reference, like, you know, old man shakes fist at cloud, you know, just like mad at everything about what's happening with with teaching these days. It is one of those that's definitely an area where I have had to do some real soul searching about how I'm approaching my relationship with my students, because I am not going to change a generation of students. I'm not going to change a classroom of students, really, because I am only one cog in their educational system. And so it's not about fully acquiescing to like all of those things, but it's about finding a good balance. And so asking yourself, what's my goal with the students? How am I going to get there? What do I see as like the completely necessary, this aspect has to be done. So for example, let's talk about like practicing. Practicing is something that has to be done. You have to get better at it. And so one way that I kind of approach that with my students, because, you know, the approach to practicing is kind of, it's a low priority. They've got a lot of things happening. It's understandable that, like, you know, putting a trumpet to your face is not as important as studying for an exam that they have or something like that. I try to appeal to their sense of camaraderie, their sense of us being a team. You know, a lot of times I use the analogy of what we do in the performing arts to being a sports team. In that, if you're a math teacher, a student's performance is not going to impact another student's performance. everyone's on their own.
Yeah.
And that's not the case with us. We are a unit. We're working together, and people are relying on each other. And so it's not about, oh, I just kind of want to do this. It's about, are you willing to let everyone down because you are not reaching the same level that we are all expecting us to be at?
That's great stuff. Yeah. That's awesome. If you think about the student, you wrote in here, the student-teacher hierarchy and communication. I like what you said where you say they tend to be wary of authority figures. And there's another spot in this same part of the article where they have less patience for teachers who aren't engaging. It's almost like, and I know that some of us, I say us being on the teacher side, we look at it as, again, kind of catering to them where they want you to do certain things so that they can learn. And I think that sometimes we forget as educators that that's how they get information. They're told by a source that's on technology. They're told by a TikTok video. They're told by a Facebook thing. And to be effective, sometimes you almost have to do that because they'll go learn something else and it's placed somewhere else from another resource. So
Sure.
I like where you kind of talk about that they don't really rely on emails that much anymore, and things like that. And then, the depth of the relationship is variable depending on your comfort level. But I also like where you have, if you have developed a successful relationship with your students, they have chosen to learn from you rather than from the many other sources available to them. Talk about, it seems to me like there's a lot of trust in that somehow you have to build, you almost have to convince them that I am a good teacher, I'm good for you, and I'm worthy of learning from. Is that fair to say?
I feel like that is pretty accurate.
Okay.
Yeah, and especially, like I say, with this age of student, if they wanted to learn, I'll say trumpet again, if they wanted to learn trumpet, they could buy a trumpet and watch YouTube videos and not interact with a single human teacher and perhaps, get some success from that, perhaps. And this is the first generation to have that option. And so any sort of human interaction through a school, especially, and I have to keep on reminding a lot of people that music is an elective. The students are choosing to be there. They don't have to be. They could be in a study hall, they could be doing visual art or maybe some other sort of elective, a foreign language or something. And so they've already made that first jump as far as like, I am willing to put myself out there and be part of this ensemble. And so then that's where the teacher has to kind of meet them. So it's not, the teacher doesn't just wait and then the students are going to come all the way. The students have made the first step by enrolling in your class. That's great. And so now it's the teacher's job to say like, okay, now I'm going to engage you in our learning process. So one thing that I've been doing for a long time is at the start of each semester or at the start of each concert cycle, I suppose I can say, we have a sit down and I say, does anyone have any rep that they're really feeling pretty strongly about? I've got a list of about 5 to 7 pieces. I'd like for us to listen to them right now, and I want to vote on them. I want to get your ideas on what are the pieces that you would be interested in playing. And there are some teachers who say like, okay, it is August, I have chosen my rep for the entire year. Because that's a good feeling.
Yeah.
You don't have to think about it anymore. But then if you're just throwing music in front of a student and they're not feeling it, are you going to have the end result that you want? As opposed to maybe having them had a say in the music that they play. They're more invested, they're more interested in it, they're more willing to take direction because they are feeling this process more because they had their say.
It seems to me, from what you're saying there, where they have, like you said, they feel it and they're part of the process. It seems so emotional. I know that some friends of mine that teach, we kind of you use the math analogy that they don't have to rely on the person next to them, but they also don't have to be emotional about math as much as they do about music, in the sense that you try to teach them to play something pretty or something soft or something forceful.
Yeah.
And that there's a connection that you can kind of make to music that I don't want to say you can't make it to math for all the math teachers out there, but it's not as strong, it's not as emotional. And yet, I think sometimes we separate the emotion and the tech. We don't think that they go together. But I like what you said, where you allow them to kind of look at and bring stuff that they find. Like, so how are you using that? Are you saying, hey, go home and check out YouTube. I want you to look for a piece of music that says this to you, and they come back with it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've even had students, just this year actually, I had students in my jazz band come to me after our concert cycle, and so we were ready to kind of start looking at new stuff. And they asked me, have you ever heard the music from Persona 5? I didn't even know what it was. It's a video game, but yeah. I didn't know. And so they played me a couple of examples. And it's this, fusion jazzy sort of, it's kind of reminiscent of Cowboy Bebop sort of stuff. And I was digging it. I was like, okay, this is great. And they were like, we would love to play this, something like this in jazz band. I was like, noted. Okay. And so did a little bit of research. I found a chart that I think would work. And then I was like, you know what? This is the amount that I'm willing to go for my kids. I arranged a chart. There wasn't one really readily available, certainly not for purchase. All the ones that I found online were kind of janky. And so it's just like, I'm just gonna arrange this. It's gonna take time, but I know that it's gonna have good results because this is something they've expressed an interest in, and this is something that they're gonna really get gung-ho about, and they're gonna get the other students to also buy into it as well. And that's something I think, I don't want to say that's overlooked, but it's not talked about enough. Having student advocates who can advocate with the other students. Having your core of students who can then get everyone else to buy in, because they're going to listen to them a lot more than listening to the old teacher. Especially a first-year teacher. They don't know me just yet. And so that's something I've always been reliant on, is student advocates, student leaders, student representatives.
That's cool. One of the things that you mentioned in here about student diligence is, you say perhaps the most pervasive critique of Gen Z students is their lack of work ethic. This shows itself in numerous ways, such as dedicating little time to practicing, as you mentioned, giving the bare minimum on assignments, showing little interest in self-learning and research. I believe a primary cause of this behavior is a fear of failure. Talk about that fear of failure, and is it because they have so many other options that they can navigate away from moments where they may fail and still feel good about themselves, or?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that I'm sure like the amount of options that they have plays into it a little bit. I personally am not a parent. And so this is not something that I can speak of from a child rearing viewpoint. But I do think that the way this generation of kids has been raised has something to say about that as well.
Yeah.
We've moved past the whole like participation trophy concept. Like that's not really a thing anymore, which I think is positive. I think that's a good thing. But we're still at a point where if kids aren't going to be immediately successful, then it's just one of those like, I just don't see the point in putting in the effort. I'm not sure. Part of it is, the youngest generation has always been sort of like, it's not cool to try. That idea.
Yeah.
And I experienced that. That's not new. Like, I mean, I remember that growing up.
When I was talking about the choices they have, so you have a student that says, well, I don't want to do it unless I'm going to be good at it. And the answer is, well, then you have to practice to be good at it. And they don't see that connection somehow. And for those of us, again, that are not Gen Z, we're like, oh, we don't get it, because that's just what it is. You work, you get it. But I guess my contention is that because it's so easy to go find whatever you want to watch on TV, because there's 500 channels.
Yeah.
Because if you're interested in watching sports or seeing a singer or anything, something artistic, someone draw, someone paint, you can go find it online on your phone. You can kind of curate your own experience the way you want to and make sure that it's good with very little effort.
Yeah.
So at times, I think that we look at those kids and say, well, they're lazy and they don't want to work for anything. Well, they haven't had to. And I think that goes hand in hand with the parents in that it seems like parents are giving things to the kids and they're not earning them as much because it's easy. As a parent, I'm speaking from that, it is easy to put a tablet or a phone in the kid's hand and have them be quiet and enjoy things, you know.
My gosh,
and again, it gives the parent a break. But, you know, I think sometimes the parents get the complete blame for not asking their son or daughter to understand the idea of work, and then you get it when it's really easy for you to get a lot of things with a lot less work nowadays because of technology and opportunity. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. I want to build on that actually a little bit because as you were talking, it kind of made me realize, yes, they are absolutely curating like online, like social media or online sources or videos or things like that. And I'm recognizing also that a lot of the things that they see online are of people succeeding. We don't see people going through the trenches of the process.
Great point. Yeah.
And so, like, there's a quote that I have hanging up on my wall. It's from Adventure Time. I've never watched Adventure Time, but it's Jake the dog, and apparently maybe it's something Jake the dog said. But it's, you have to suck at something, and then, you know, until before you are eventually sort of good at something.
Yeah.
You have to be okay with sucking. You have to be okay with failure, essentially, with not being good right off the bat. And I would venture to say that kids who are athletes, they recognize this. You know, a kid who wants to start playing basketball would love to be able to start hitting threes immediately. They're not going to. You know, and so then they go through the process of development that is going to eventually build up their ability to do so. And music is the same exact way. A lot of students don't necessarily make that same connection where it's like, okay, like concert snare drum roll, like we know that this is like a lifelong pursuit of being able to play a good sounding concert snare drum roll. And there, you know, so a kid can just as easily, like a kid's not going to go to YouTube unless they're purposely searching for, like, find me a bad snare drum roll. If you just say snare drum roll, they're going to get some amazing musician who's going to be demonstrating a snare drum roll, and it's going to sound amazing. They're going to get a little upset that they don't sound amazing.
Yeah.
And so there is that sort of, like, again, with the just fire hose of information that's available to them, it's not curated in a way that really prepares them for development and growth.
Right. Now, you wrote this a few years ago, and in between, of course, we had the always wonderful COVID. So has that, how do you feel that has affected all these different topics? Did it just intensify all of them? It seems like it, right?
Yes, and of course I'm only speaking from my experience. All teachers have noticed the COVID drop, just in student ability, student behavior, student like interpersonal relationships, problem solving, the reliance, self-reliance, things like that. So for me, I'm noticing that in my middle school kids. And that's kind of where it is, in the 7th and 8th graders right now, because those are the ones who would have been taking beginning lessons right at the start of the pandemic. And now it's a few years later, and we haven't really recovered from that. Same thing's happening in all classrooms, but there's definitely a COVID dip that is worldwide. I don't even say nationwide, it's worldwide. And so it's something that is, you know, you adjust and you kind of are flexible in your teaching approaches, but you also have to manage your expectations.
Sure.
Because what you would normally expect a 7th and 8th grade musician to be able to do, through no fault of their own, they're not able to do it.
Right.
And so I think that's just something the entire music, I'll just keep it to music right now, the entire musical educational world is going to be dealing with that as we move forward.
Right.
We'll still have our superstars, but if we're just talking the general public and the general student involvement, we're going to see a dip. And it's just, how can we as the teachers still make learning enjoyable, still make our music choices fun and educational and worthwhile?
Sure.
You know, that falls to us.
Yeah, definitely. So the next generation, as we talked about a little bit before we started recording, is the Gen Alpha. Is there I don't know what, is there a place that we've put Gen Alpha that we've decided what they are? You say, well, what's Gen Z? And you get all the same buzz phrases. Have we figured out what they are at Gen Alpha yet?
I mean, I'm sure people have. I have done a little bit of research on it. I mean, these are the middle school. Some people are also calling Gen Alpha Gen C for Generation COVID. And so those are the kids right now. These are kids that were born in the early 2010s, and they're projecting up through the mid 2020s will be Gen Alpha.
Okay.
And so right now, those kids are continuing a lot in the same way as Gen Z is, as far as their reliance on technology, as far as the attitude and approaches that they have about education, and also as far as their awareness of what's happening in their society, what's happening around the world. They are very conscious of a lot of the issues like climate issues, like LGBTQ plus issues, like racial issues and things like that.
Yeah.
So more societal things that are happening. They're being bombarded with lots of that stuff much earlier than I would say even really Gen Z was. And so because of that, they're very self-aware. They kind of have a good idea of what their educational focus is and what it is not. And they're also, I mean, at least I have found, working with those kids, they want to learn. But it's the same as Gen Z in that they want to learn on their terms. And you have to kind of find that middle ground.
Yeah, the balance is always important. I feel like we've been talking about how tough it is and how behind they are, and it's kind of a negative thing, but I know that I have a lot of teaching friends, and a couple of the things that I've seen them do that I think are pretty ingenious. For one thing is that you have to keep up. One of the questions that I talked about asking you was, is this student, this type of student here to stay? This, whatever their shortcomings are they going to continue? Will they get better as we get further from COVID? And what do we need to do to stay equipped? And I've seen folks that have taught for more than 25 years that have really embraced, and we say that phrase all the time, embrace technology. And it's not about making a good recording in your band room anymore. With things like Freeform is a Google, kind of almost doing like a sketch of an idea sort of thing, or almost a storyboarding type of idea. And I've seen teachers that say, okay, here's this piece of music. I want you to go out and find pictures, articles, reels, videos, TikToks, whatever that you think represents this music. When you hear the music, give me images about what it makes you feel. So the kids can go use technology because they know how to do it. And then it gives a personal satisfaction to the student to do it, but then the teacher gets insight into that student as well. So doing things like that, I've heard it's a unique position working at Steve Weiss as an educational salesperson, because I'm speaking to programs all over the country. You've got these incredible programs in a lot of places around the country, and you've got some that are real far behind in terms of the kids' ability or even the funding. But when you hear a nugget like that, oh, that's a cool way to use that, to kind of personalize it. The same teacher actually, she has the kids dedicate today's learning to someone, and each student gets a chance to do that. So if grandmom is ill, if someone in the family has passed, if my friend had a rough day, blah, 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 or on the positive, I appreciate my elementary school band director because I wouldn't be here without he or she. And each person in the room gets a chance to do that. And I think we miss that emotional component that is still there. They're still human beings. We think of them, with this technology so much that we forget that part. And I like that you said in here when it gets to that my current students have new concepts of ownership. They rarely buy stuff physically. They're downloading things like that and everything. And you say that to reach our students, our concept of the teacher-student relationship needs to evolve. Generation Z wants to have a say in the creation of their culture. And that's where they have a say, because I get to tell you what this music means in this free form. I get to have a say in what the music means to me. It may not mean the same thing to you. And you say, I challenge you to stay open-minded, learn about your students' predilections, concerns, and aspirations in order to achieve long-lasting positive results. I think if we look at it as though it's a problem in a sense, but we don't get caught up in it and we challenge ourselves to kind of overcome. I mean, it sounds too obvious, but I don't know that we all do it.
No, oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
There are teachers who are incredibly just, they're set in their ways, you know, like
Sure.
This is the way I learned how to teach. I was successful for many years, and this is just the way it's happening. I do feel, I mean, we always point to like the previous generation talking about the current youngest generation, and just like, you know, back in the 50s, you know, talking about, oh, those young kids with their rock and roll, you know. I really truly do feel as though it's not a good comparison to talk about the youngest generation of 50 years ago and the youngest generation of today. You know, we are experiencing it, and it is, that's all technology right there. We are experiencing a real drastic difference in how students are engaging with the world. That was not even a possible concept 50 years ago. And so it's all the more important for teachers to be able to adapt to that, because it's not going away. It's not going to change. Technology is not going to go back to, you know, like, oh, I've got a landline phone in my house and that's it. It's just not. And so, yeah, it's really important that teachers are, I mean, embracing technology. And it doesn't have to be where you're using a lot of technology as assignments or things like that. It just has to be like, okay, how well am I managing my school's learning management system? You know, like, so we use Canvas. And so it's just like, am I using Canvas adequately or not? I mean, it can even go beyond the classroom to that sense. Kids, you know, like I said before, just to reiterate, they really are invested in their education. They have a very strong idea of what they want, even if like we don't seem to pick up on it. Like, they know what it is. And it's just a matter of allowing them to feel as though they, you know, have their say. They have a sense of ownership, a sense of a communal drive. That where they and the teacher, it's a journey they're on together. And it's not the teacher telling them what to do.
That's awesome. So what do you have going on as far as personally? Do you have projects coming up, or is there something happening at Abington Friends we should know about?
Well, definitely at AFS. I mean, we've got, of course, our spring concerts are coming up. We have Arts Showcase, where we get to showcase some of our senior students who've been going through the whole upper school experience in their art. We've got our Music Society is putting on a great concert April 1st. And then, like I said, you know, it's my first year there. I'm really hoping that starting in the future, we can start getting out into the community a little bit more and start engaging in that sense. I feel like that's all of those performances stopped with the pandemic. And I know that a lot of schools are finally starting to kind of get back out there. And so I'm looking forward to joining that. I'm also excited about, I perform with the Atlantic Brass Band based out of Rowan University, and we're going to nationals in April and hoping to take home first place there. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm also very excited that I'm going to be on the faculty at the Penn State Summer Music Institute, which is it's an audition-based camp, a week-long. The format's a little different this year. They used to do basically primarily a wind ensemble situation, and now they're focusing more on chamber ensembles. And so there will be a percussion ensemble. That's going to be the primary ensemble for percussionists at that camp. And this is my second year doing it. It's a chance to work with high-level percussionists. Again, something that I haven't had the opportunity to do since teaching collegiately. I'm super excited about that also.
That sounds great. It's been great to meet you, Dr. Barudin. I really appreciate you coming in. I think this is such a cool subject. Just kind of always looking for interesting people to talk to, of course, and some of them, You know, some of them have their name on some drumsticks and stuff like that, and a lot of people know them. And I'll tell you, when I read this article, I was like, we got to have this guy in here. It was a bonus knowing that you were down the street. So
that's fantastic. I mean, I really appreciate you reaching out. And yeah, this is, I knew from the start that I wasn't going to be like the new hot performer out there. And I always felt very strongly about percussion pedagogy, and now I'm out into concert bands, so just music pedagogy in general, just really kind of taking in the best teaching practices, methodologies, ways that we can really engage current students. And so this article was just kind of a reflection of that. I'm always learning. That's the important thing of teachers. We're learning with our students, and it's a journey we're doing together.
Great. So, Dr. Barudin, cool stuff, right? So we're glad that you guys were here to watch this. If you have any questions, you can always get a hold of us at the Education Department at Steve Weiss Music, and it's education@steveweissmusic.com is our email address. If you have specific questions for Dr. Barudin, send them to that email address, and I'll be sure to get those questions off to him. He's an endorser of Yamaha, Innovative, Sabian, is just doing a lot of things. Again, search for him on our website and check out some of the stuff that he's written. I've been listening to it as we led up to this interview, and it's very achievable, interesting music for you to have your kids play. So thanks for watching. We're going to keep trying to bring this content to you as often as we can, just to keep you playing and enjoying music. Thank you.